Right now, without thinking about it, you want something sweet. And you've probably been told that's a modern problem, that sugar is a trap the food companies built, a bad habit civilization gave you, something your ancestors were pure and free from. That's wrong. Completely wrong. Your craving for sweetness is one of the oldest things about you. It is older than farming, older than fire, older than our species. It is older than humans. That pull you feel toward a ripe piece of fruit or a spoon of honey was already ancient when the first human was born. So the real question isn't why do we eat so much sugar? The real question is much stranger. When did this craving actually start? And to answer that, we have to go back, not thousands of years, but millions. Because your sweet tooth has been waiting inside your family tree for a very, very long time. Let's start with the taste itself. On your tongue, right now, there's a specific piece of biological machinery, a receptor built from two proteins that exists for one job: to detect sugar and report back to your brain that this is good. Eat more of this. And here's the thing. That's not an accident, and it's not a design flaw. It's one of the smartest survival tools your ancestors ever had. Because think about what sweetness actually meant in the wild for millions of years. There were no labels, no one to tell you what was safe. You had a mouth and a set of instincts, and that was it. And in nature, bitter usually means poison, a warning. But sweet means ripe. Sweet means ready. Sweet means calories, energy, fuel, and crucially, not toxic. So an animal that loved sweetness went straight for the safest, richest food in the environment. And an animal that didn't lost every time. So the love of sweet wasn't a weakness that evolution let slip through. It was the winner. It got selected for again and again across millions of years because the creatures that had it survived to pass it on. You didn't inherit a bad habit. You inherited a superpower that worked perfectly for the world it was built for. And we can actually prove how deep this goes because it's written in your genes, in what you can't do. You cannot make your own vitamin C. Almost every animal on Earth can. A dog makes its own. A goat makes its own. You can't. If you don't eat vitamin C, you get scurvy and you die. So why would evolution let something that essential just break? Here's the answer, and it's beautiful. Around 60 million years ago, the ancestors we share with monkeys and apes were eating so much fruit, so much vitamin C-rich fruit every single day that the gene for making it ourselves became pointless. Why build a factory for something you're drowning in? So the gene broke, the mutation stuck, and it got passed down to lemurs, to monkeys, to apes, to you. That broken gene is a 60-million-year-old fingerprint, proof sitting in your DNA that our lineage committed to fruit so hard, we literally outsourced our survival to it. We are the fruit-eating apes. That's not a metaphor. It's biology. There's even a wilder idea here, and I want to flag it as a theory. A good one, but still argued over. Some scientists think that around 15 million years ago, as the climate cooled and fruit got scarcer, one of our ape ancestors picked up another mutation, one that made them incredibly good at turning fruit sugar into body fat. In a world where the fruit might vanish for months, being able to hoard every scrap of sweetness as fat was a lifesaver. The problem? That same ancient talent for turning sugar into fat is still running in you today, except now the fruit never runs out. So a gift that once saved your ancestors from starving may now be part of why modern bodies store fat so easily. Again, that one's still debated. But even the debate tells you something. Our bodies were tuned down to the genetic level for a world where sweetness was precious and rare. Rare. Hold on to that word, because it's the whole story. For your ancestors, concentrated sweetness was not sitting on a shelf. It was seasonal. It was risky. It was hunted. And nothing shows that better than the one food that mattered more than any other: honey. If you want to understand your sweet tooth, forget candy. Think honey. Because honey is nature's sugar bomb, the single most calorie-dense food you can find in the wild. And humans did not politely gather it. They went to war for it. Look at the Hadza, a people in Tanzania who still forage the way humans did for most of our history. Ask them their favorite food in the world, not just tasty, favorite. And the answer from the men and the women both is honey. It's not close. And it's not a treat on the side. Honey and the bee larvae in it make up around 15% of everything they eat in a year. To get it, a man will find a wild beehive high up in a baobab tree, hammer wooden pegs into the trunk, and climb dozens of feet up into a furious cloud of stinging bees to tear open the nest with his hands. That is not a snack run. That is risking your life for sweetness. And that hunger is so old, we painted it on walls. In a rock shelter in Spain, there's an image thousands of years old. A human figure dangling from ropes on a sheer cliff, one hand reaching into a nest, bees swarming all around. Our ancestors looked at a vertical rock face full of angry insects and thought, worth it. And that same scene, people raiding wild hives, shows up in ancient art in India, in Africa, in Australia. All over the world, independently, humans decided that honey was worth almost dying for. And here's my favorite part of the entire story. Because our craving for honey was so powerful, it created a partnership with another species. In parts of Africa, there's a bird. It's actually called the honey guide, and it knows where the beehives are, but it can't break them open. Humans can't easily find the hidden hives. We can smash them apart. So over thousands of years, the bird and the human struck a deal. The honey hunters of Mozambique make a specific sound, a kind of trilling grunt. Brr-hmm. And when the honey guide hears it, it flies down and actually leads them through the bush, tree to tree, straight to a hidden hive. The humans open it, take the honey, and leave the wax and larva for the bird. And scientists tested this. This isn't folklore. When the hunters used that special call, their chance of being led to a nest went from about 1 in 6 to more than half. A wild animal cooperating with humans in its own language to find sugar. That partnership may be hundreds of thousands of years old. Think about that. Our craving for sweetness is so ancient and so strong that it taught a bird to talk to us. There is no clearer proof of how badly and how early we wanted it. So for the vast, vast majority of our story, this is what eating sugar meant. It meant ripe fruit in season. It meant risking 100 bee stings for a dripping honeycomb. It meant a partnership with a bird. Sweetness was a prize you earned. And then everything changed. Because eventually, we stopped just finding sugar. We learned to make it. It starts with a plant, sugarcane, a tall grass first tamed by people on the island of New Guinea up to 10,000 years ago. For thousands of years, that's all it was, a stalk you chew to suck out the sweet juice. But then, in ancient India, someone cracked the real secret. They figured out how to boil that juice down and dry it and turn it into something that had never existed before. Sugar you could hold, crystals, a sweetness you could store forever and carry anywhere and trade. That happened around 1700 years ago, and it changed the world. And by the way, no single genius invented sugar. It was slow, layered, collective work over centuries. But the word still remembers the journey. Our word sugar comes from the ancient Indian word sharkara. And our word candy comes from khanda, meaning a piece of that hard crystal sugar. Every time you say candy, you're speaking a word that traveled the same road the sugar did, out of India across the whole world. But here's what people forget. For almost all of that history, too, sugar was still incredibly rare. It was just rare in a new way. It went from being a wild treasure to being a luxury for the ultra-rich. When crystal sugar first reached medieval Europe, it was so precious it was locked away and sold by the gram, like a spice, like a medicine. In some cities, a single pound of sugar was worth dozens of pounds of cheese. It was a food for kings. In fact, some of the few people wealthy enough to eat sugar constantly were European royalty. And some of those kings ended up with rotten black teeth and swollen bodies precisely because they were the only ones who could afford the thing everyone else could only dream about. Sugar wasn't everywhere. Sugar was power. And that stayed true until the machines arrived. In the last 200 years, we industrialized it. We learned to pull sugar out of a humble root, the sugar beet, and grow it in cool climates. We built factories, and the price collapsed. And the thing that was once a wild prize, then a king's luxury, became the cheapest, most ordinary thing in the world. Something in every drink, every sauce, every loaf of bread on every shelf, in endless supply for pennies. And that, right there, is the twist this whole story has been building toward. Because your body never got the memo. Your brain is still running software written over millions of years for a world where sweetness meant, this is rare, this is safe, this is precious. Grab it now because it will be gone soon and it might save your life. That instinct was right. For almost all of human history, it was completely, perfectly right. But that world is gone. The bees, the cliffs, the seasons, the risk, gone. The signal that used to mean rare treasure now points at a shelf holding 50 kinds of candy that will still be there tomorrow and the day after, forever. 300 years ago, the average person ate a few pounds of sugar a year. Today, it's over 150. Your craving didn't break. Your craving is ancient, and it is doing exactly what it was built to do. It's just that for the first time in the entire history of life on Earth, there's no cliff to climb, no bird to follow, no bees to fight. Nothing rare about it at all. So the next time you feel that pull towards something sweet and some part of you feels guilty, remember what it really is. It's not weakness. It's not a modern flaw. It's a signal older than your species, lit by fruit and honey millions of years ago, still burning quietly inside you, still trying to keep you alive, in a world that finally, at last, gave it more sweetness than it ever knew how to handle. And if you want to know what else your body is still secretly craving from a world that no longer exists, the ancient hungers for fat, for salt, for the richest thing in reach, that's the next story. Because sugar is only the beginning of what your body still remembers.